Welcome to Maine Quality, and with me today is Julie Rosenbach, Sustainability Director for the City of South Portland. So what would you like to get the word out about?
I'd like to tell people about our One Climate Future Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. It's a joint plan we're developing with Portland in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. Which means virtually changing the way we use energy and the energy we use, and also making our communities more resilient in the face of climate change, which means making our communities more adaptable.
That's a big goal. What's the process that you've come up with strategies to address this issue and meet these goals?
The first two things we did were we developed a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory for both cities. We pooled our funding and hired really fantastic consultants who are helping us work on this process. With the baseline of greenhouse gas emissions, we know that 60% of our emissions, over 60% from both cities, come from buildings and energy. About 35% comes from transportation, and 2 to 3% comes from waste. And while that's a really small percentage, it's a really important focus area because that number only captures the end-of-life emissions from products when they enter into the waste stream and get processed as waste to energy. It doesn't capture the mining, the processing, the transportation, the use, all of that stuff which we know emits greenhouse gas emissions. So I always say that everybody touches waste almost every day. And so it's really a good place to start with communities in order to build more resilient communities, is to figure out how to have a more circular economy and not just simply increase our recycling rates. So the first thing we did was the greenhouse gas emissions inventory. We also did a vulnerability assessment for both communities to look at what are the biggest impacts we're facing with climate change and where are we most vulnerable. And so that fantastic report, which is on our website, oneclimatefuture.org, highlights 10 key vulnerabilities. So with those two reports and our baseline established, we developed an 18-month process to look at 4 categories of focus areas, and that's based on our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So the first is buildings and energy. The second is transportation and land use. The third is waste reduction. And the fourth is adaptation or resilience. And we have worked with experts, regional experts, local experts, a number of different stakeholders in order to inform our thinking about the strategies we're developing to reduce emissions and help our communities become more resilient. It's going to be a really long report. There's a lot of strategies in there, and it's going to set a great framework for how we can achieve our long-term goals in an immediate, practical way. So we have this long-term goal of basically near climate neutrality, but our action plan sets out the most immediate next steps and lays them out for us.
So you've done a community-wide survey in both Portland and South Portland, getting feedback from citizens, from businesses, from everybody. Can you tell me about that process and where you are now and where you're going with it?
Yeah, we really consider this a community-wide plan. To us, it's like developing a comprehensive plan for the cities. And in fact, South Portland is about to update the comprehensive plan, and this plan will really inform that update. And as such, we really wanted to get as much community input and community engagement as possible. That's why we made this an 18-month process, so that we could try to reach out to as many people as possible. And in fact, Orion, we had 3 surveys. The first was getting a benchmark of where people were at. So how people think and feel about climate change, what they're concerned about, and what actions they're taking. The second was to identify the barriers. Why aren't they taking other actions, and how can we address those barriers? And the third survey was really the longest and the meatiest, and it was getting people's thoughts and reactions to some of the strategies that we've identified in our plan, and helping prioritize and see where there's maybe less support or more support for our approaches.
Did anything surprise you in this process and what response you got to the different surveys?
Yes, I was absolutely pleasantly surprised by how many people are really interested in taking action around climate change. At one point, I handed out paper surveys, and this was our last surveys. It was 21 pages, and I had the survey with a stamped envelope so people could take it home, take the survey, and just send it back. And I talked to people at the polls, and I asked them, "Hey, would you like to take a survey?" And most of them sort of said, "Well, what's it about?" And I said, "The strategies we're thinking about for our One Climate Future Action Plan." And almost every single one of them said, "Absolutely, I'm really interested in this. I will take the survey." And we got, over 550 responses for that survey. So I've been really happy with just the level of interest and the level of support that we've received for this plan. Our goal is to roll out really big, ambitious policy changes and projects and programs that are going to help us transition to renewable energy, use less energy, use it more efficiently in a very practical, stepped-in approach. It's a fine balance. I think people are ready for this, and they're just looking at how we can do it in a practical way.
Why is it important for not just one city to tackle this on their own, but to collaborate with each other? And how has it been collaborating with the city of Portland on this?
As far as we know, we're the only two cities in the country that are working on one joint regional approach for both cities. And we're quite proud of that because really, we realized that we can take an enormous amount of action in South Portland and we can really have an impact, but we can more than double our impact. We can increase it exponentially if we show people how effective you can be at partnering to address climate change on a broader level, because how we address climate change is going to be through partnerships.
You're listening to Maine Quality,